Chapter 22 of Unions, Part 1. Rainbow Dash gnashed her teeth and pumped her wings and fought against the biting wind. The blizzard had come over her without warning, a mile-high howling thunderhead that chewed through her exposed coat with ice and sleet. She knew she was close to the Argo, having caught a glimpse of it cresting the horizon just as the storm wall overtook her. She hoped they had seen her too. Even with her magic warding off the worst of the storm, she was chilled to the bone. Her legs shivered violently with each flap, and her teeth ached from clenching them to keep them from chattering. She wished she hadn't lost Flint's oversized scarf. Oily smell or not, it would have gone a long way towards keeping her warm right now. What if Saber had ordered the ship up and over the storm? As exhausted and cold as she was right now, Rainbow wasn't sure if she'd be able to follow. It was hard enough just keeping her wings from buckling already. She gulped as she glanced downwards into the opaque white shroud that surrounded her in every direction. Perhaps she could find a mountain peak and take shelter in its shadow until the storm passed. But who knew how long that might be? Rainbow shook her head. She wasn't the type of mare to deny the truth to herself. If she let her hooves touch the deathly cold ice below right now, she would never fly again.
Come on!
She scanned her surroundings again, but all she saw was the same impenetrable whiteness. The wind howled in her ears, and she flinched as a sliver of ice cut into her cheek, drawing a thin trail of blood.
Where are they?
Rainbow's breath caught as she picked out a faint glow off to her side, below her. She bled altitude, praying to Celestia, and sighed her relief at the sight of the Argo's bridge, the light filtering past its frost-coated glass with the promise of warmth. A powerful gust of wind buckled Rainbow's left wing, and she cried out as the storm dragged her along like some giant foal. Instinct honed over a lifetime of flying took over, and she closed her eye and tucked her other wing in, feeling the turbulent currents warring over her body. Blood pooled in her head as she spun, drawing what little warmth was left from her limbs. She didn't know how far the ground was, or even whether the storm was dragging her downwards at all, but she didn't have time to worry about it. She snapped her wings open almost without realizing, catching the wind again at the perfect moment. She opened her eye and pumped her wings hard, wrestling with the storm, pouring her last reserves of energy into the battle. She was so close! She could see the shadow of the Argo's hull, and then the shape of its propellers, and then the fluttering flaps of the torn canvas as she neared its envelope. The wind slapped her to the side, and she grunted as she bounced off the ship, nearly throwing her into a spin once more. Thinking quickly, she pushed herself deeper into the heavy canvas with one wing, while tearing into it with the blade on the other. One instant, she was struggling to keep her wings open, and then she was falling through calm air. Her grin of victory was interrupted by the impact of hard metal against her back. Stars exploded in her vision, and for a long moment she lay still, listening to her ears ringing, and the canvas flapping, and the hull groaning. She had made it. As if there'd been any doubt. Rainbow groaned as she rolled back onto her hooves. She was on the catwalk that ran the length of the ship's envelope. The gas-filled balloons arranged around the space swayed with the wind leaking in through the tears. She limped forwards, driven on by ragged determination. She just had to find Saber and tell her what she had found. Then she could rest. She found the trapdoor that led down into the infirmary, and after a few tries, managed to pull it open. She half fell, half fluttered down into the heat of the ship.
Saber?
Her voice came out in a barely audible croak. She licked her lips as she stumbled out into the hall and towards the bridge.
Saber!
A door opened behind her, and she turned to see Flintlock leaning out of the galley with a small frown on his face. He glanced back into the room, raising his voice. "Hey, Jackie, Dash is back!" He turned back to her and narrowed his eyes. "Without my scarf?" "Rainbow?" Applejack brushed past him, rushing up to support Rainbow's weight. "Darnation, RD, y'all are cold as an apple popsicle and shivering like a leaf." She wrapped a hoof around Rainbow's shoulders, guiding her back towards the cargo hold. "Come on, let's get you tucked in somewhere warm."
No.
Rainbow grunted her frustration at her chattering teeth and tried to pull away.
Gotta talk to Saber. Found something.
Applejack rolled her eyes. "Saber ain't going anywhere, Philly. We need to get you warmed up before y'all's hooves start falling off. And she can talk to you just fine when you're wrapped up in a warm bed." Rainbow growled, trying again to push the other mare off. But even on her best day, she couldn't beat Applejack in a real contest of strength. After a brief struggle, she collapsed against her friend with a tired sigh, allowing herself to be carried down the stairs and into the cargo hold. "Flint?" Applejack called back as they stepped through the steam of the door. "Bring Saber back here, would ya?"
"Aye, ma'am. Whatever you say, ma'am. I'm your ever-loyal servant, ma'am."
The big stallion's grumbling was cut off by the door hissing shut behind them. Rainbow's shivers grew stronger as the colder air of the wide, open cargo hold washed over her.
There's a village. Airships.
Shh! Let's get you into bed first. Applejack led her through the curtain leading to Twilight's vacant room. She flicked the neatly made blanket back with one leg before gently lowering Rainbow onto the bed. She frowned as she looked down at the cold steel fastened to Rainbow's wings, the metal marred by black bloodstains. "Something attack you out there?" Rainbow grinned weakly.
Yep. Killed it.
Applejack rolled her eyes and pulled the sheets up to Rainbow's chin. "Stay here. I'm gonna go stir up something warm for you to fill up on." She turned, pausing in the doorway to fix Rainbow with a stern glare. "And if you ain't in this bed when I come back, I'll knock y'all's lights out and tie you to it myself." Rainbow opened her mouth to shoot back some witty retort, but the cowpony was already gone. She was left alone, listening to the sound of the cargo door opening and the rhythmic ticking of the Argo's hull. She could already feel the freezing chill beginning to recede. She rolled onto her side, wrapping her hooves up in the blankets and curling into a ball.
I should get up.
She thought.
I need to talk to Saber now.
She didn't move. Gathering all her will, she pursed her lips and resolutely decided to throw the sheets aside, hunt Saber down, and report her findings. And then fell into a deep sleep. Anna shook her head in disdain as she frowned up at her sister's extended wings.
Seriously, sis, I was only gone for a few days. What were you even doing to mess your feathers up like this? Just stuff.
Gava shrugged, and Anna reached up to deliver a soft slap to the back of her head.
Hold still, you. This takes precision.
It had been a full day and night since Anna slipped back inside the city walls, but even spending nearly 12 hours dozing in bed with her sister hadn't been enough to dispel the last dregs of her exhaustion. All the inn's other patrons, and even the owner, had left last night, hoping either to avoid the chaos of the battle or exploit it, leaving them free to use the building as they saw fit. Presently, that meant Anna preening Gava's disheveled wings as they relaxed behind the bar. 2 empty bowls sat on the counter before them, still carrying the faint smell of homemade rat soup. Gava had never quite developed proper wing care habits in her youth. Sure, she'd twist around and pull a broken feather free or push one back into place if it was really bothering her, but she rarely spent time on them otherwise. It fell to Anna to ensure her sister looked civilized, or as civilized as she could look when she so often insisted on talking to ponies without cleaning the blood off her beak.
Are you done yet? Not nearly,
Anna said with an exaggerated sigh.
Would it kill you to do this yourself when I'm gone? If I did it myself, you'd have nothing to do when you got back.
Anna smirked, and she could easily imagine Gava's self-satisfied grin as she leaned in and grabbed a feather in her teeth. Truthfully, she didn't mind the work, and there was a part of her that enjoyed it. After the stress of her last mission, it was comforting to return to her sister's side and know that, no matter how much chaos there might be surrounding them, Gava would always need her there to keep her wings neat.
Hey, Anna?
Something in the griffin's tone gave Anna pause.
Yeah? Let's not split up anymore.
Anna blinked. Her sister suddenly sounded tired, drained of all her usual bluster. She jumped up onto the bar and lay down, bringing herself to Gava's eye level.
You all right?
Gava clacked her beak.
I've been thinking. Oh.
Anna grinned, nudging Gava's leg with a huff.
So that's the problem.
I'm being serious,
Gava snapped, wiping the playful smile off Anna's face. She sighed and shuffled her wings, looking away.
Dad always told us we needed to stick together, right? As long as we were together, we could do anything. Everything bad that's happened to us, losing the Screech, our crew, doubling our bounty, nearly dying, and getting stuck working for some stupid pony instead. It all started with us splitting up.
Anna leaned into Gava's shoulder, nuzzling against her soft plumage, and decided not to point out that just about all of those things were results of Gava's actions.
Don't worry, sis. If I've learned anything these past few weeks, it's that you can't be left on your own for long. From now on, I don't care what that price is, I'm sticking by your side.
Anna didn't blame her sister for the consequences that had befallen them. She never did. She had known since fillyhood that Gava was callous and overconfident, and that leaving her alone in any situation was liable to lead to violence sooner or later. She saw it as her role, almost, to be there to keep those wilder instincts under control until they were needed, like a hound on a leash. It may have been Gava's actions that directly led to the destruction of the Rock's Screech, but Anna blamed herself. She should have been smart enough to realize that the strange gifted were too powerful and forced Gava to back down. But she had been cocky too, convinced that nothing could stand up to her and her sister united, and they had lost something that could never be replaced. Gava turned her head, resting her chin on Anna's brow.
I'm sorry.
Anna let out a derisive snort, but her smile was genuine.
Careful, sis. You spend too much time thinking you might turn into a pony.
Gava sighed, and Anna imagined her rolling her eyes.
Yeah, I figured you'd say something smart about it.
Anna grinned as she wrapped her forelegs around the griffin's bulky shoulders and squeezed.
There's nothing to forgive, sis.
For a moment, the two were silent, opting to share their affection without words. The wind whispered through the alleys outside, complementing the soft crackling of the fireplace. There was a click from the door. Anna pushed off her sister hard, sliding a short distance across the bar and looking to the door with a well-practiced expression of distant curiosity. Gava grabbed a drink from under the bar in her tail and flung it towards Anna, and she caught it in a wing, popped the cap off with the claw on her wingtip, and raised the bottle to her lips. By the time Whitehorn stepped inside and closed the door behind him, he was met by a pair of crude bounty hunters. Anna watched him approach with a skeptic eye as she nursed her bottle. Plain cider to her disappointment, while Gava made a show of scratching crude images into the cheap stone countertop with a talon. "Ladies?" Whitehorn dipped his head, dislodging the thin powder of snow that had collected on his mane, and took a moment to adjust his clothes before taking a seat at the bar. "What happened to the innkeep?"
We ate him.
Anna smirked, pushing her emptied soup bowl forwards.
There's plenty more in the back if you're hungry.
Whitehorn grimaced as he glanced down into the bowl and spotted the last strings of bone and meat floating in the thick broth. No, thank you. I'm afraid I'm here to talk business and don't have time for a meal."
We got you the surrender you wanted.
Even with a bar stool beneath him, Gava still towered over the unicorn.
Our business is done, Pony.
He answered her with a polite smile. To be more accurate, when I clarified our terms with your cleverer sister, I said that we could revisit the negotiations once the city fell. I'm not releasing you from our contract just yet. Without warning, Gava leapt on top of the bar, knocking dishes to the ground and buffeting Whitehorn with a powerful wind from her wings. He fell backwards with a strangled cry, and Gava was already crouching down to pounce when Anna spoke up.
Wait.
Why should I?
Gava countered. Her tail lashed behind her as she watched the unicorn cower on the floor.
He's a snake.
Anna fixed her with a stern glare, and after a brief moment, Gava settled onto the countertop with a low growl. Anna hopped off the bar and circled around to Whitehorn's head, gently pulling his hooves away from his face.
Seeing as you didn't bring any guards, and I know you don't have a death wish, I assume you have something else to say.
Yes, of course. His words came out with an irritated bite. I have no wish to hold you here. The job is done and you did it well. And if you want to be on your way, then I'm ready to provide final payment and leave you be. He glanced towards where Gava was still watching him like a cat sizing up prey, and Anna pulled his chin back towards her with a huff.
Hey, eyes on me. I know you're just dying to tell me the other half of your offer, so you'd better make it quick before the big bird gets bored. I can only hold her back for so long, you know.
That much is clear. Anna reached a hoof into Whitehorn's vest, pulling out a bag of bits and throwing it back towards Gava. He wisely decided not to question her. If you're interested in more money, I'd be willing to draw up a more long-term contract for your perusal. Something written down and signed by all three of us with rigid terms. Anna arched a brow at that.
Triple pay, and we reserve the right to break the contract if you try to send us on a suicide mission. Oh, and we'll need a new airship?
He laughed in her face. I would be insane to sign such a deal. You can have a half-over raise with adjustments at quarterly reviews, and I'll put in a good word with a friend to get you a lease on an airship. Anna nodded. She had been hoping to maybe haggle him up to double, but she knew the longer negotiations went on, the more he'd slide into his scheming mindset. The airship had been a stretch too. No merchant lord would lease a ship out to a lying thestral and a savage griffin, but she knew Whitehorn's influence reached far and carried a heavy weight. It was the best shot they had at regaining their freedom of movement without stealing a ship. She extended a huff and hoped Gava wouldn't decide to interject.
Deal.
Well then. He accepted the huff, groaning as she pulled him off the ground. Excellent. I can have the contract drafted. That will take some time, and I won't be on Alta Lucia long enough to see it signed. Gava scoffed.
I knew you'd have some excuse, Pony.
Whitehorn glared at her as he straightened his vest. This is no excuse, Gava. The deal is struck, and I have every intent of seeing it through. But logistics won't allow that to happen here or now. The Equestrian Parliament has already been in session for a week, and I need to be in Harvest at my earliest convenience. He looked back to Anna. All I ask is that you two meet me there. You can consider those bits you stole from me an advance payment, and I'd encourage you to hire passage.
We'll find our way,
Anna said. She grabbed his shoulder with a wingtip, intentionally tearing into his vest with her claw, and began guiding him back to the door.
Any last scheming you wanted to get done before you go?
He frowned, but didn't resist. I believe we've finished with our business for now.
Great. Good to hear.
Swirling motes of snow danced into the room as Anna pulled the door open and shoved him back out into the street.
If you need anything before the contract is assigned, don't ask us. We'll kill you.
With one last fanged smile, she shut the door in his face, cutting off his answer.
And that, Gava,
Anna twirled back to face her sister with a little dip and bow,
is how you negotiate.
You didn't even ask my opinion,
Gava said, tail still lashing slowly behind her.
I really wanted to kill him.
Now, see, that is exactly why I didn't ask your opinion,
Anna said as she walked back to the bar.
Thanks for not interrupting, by the way.
Gava shrugged.
I figured you had a plan.
I did. And I'm glad I can always rely on you to stand in the background and look menacing.
Anna winked.
So, you want to get a new ship? Good pay?
Gava clacked her beak.
I don't like being tied down.
Neither do I. BD's our best shot at rebuilding. Hey, does this place have anything mango?
Anna, there's nothing behind this bar but unlabeled bottles of cider.
Anna sighed before hopping onto a bar stool.
Whatever. Look, almost every air pony in Equestria hates us after what you did in Leviathan Wakes. And no merchant lord is gonna even talk about selling us a ship. Just look at us.
Gava snorted.
You could steal one.
Yeah, and get even more heat on us.
Anna shook her head before picking her bottle back up and reluctantly taking a sip.
I don't know where or how he gets it, but Whitehorn has connections everywhere he goes. He can protect us, and we can use him to replace the Screech.
A pony ship can't replace the Screech.
Anna sighed again, frowning down at her bottle of tasteless cider. It wasn't that she disagreed. The Screech was irreplaceable in so many ways. It was the ship that had saved her. The ship she had grown up on. The ship where she'd learned what it meant to have a family again. It was her home. The only place where she didn't feel like she had to keep a wall at her back. Almost every good memory she ever had was set against the backdrop of that ship, accompanied by the voice of the old griffin she had called Dad. And now it was gone. And all they had to remember him by was a bleached skull and a tarnished chest, and a revolver that was older than they were. When it was quiet, and Anna wasn't immersed in the rush of violence or the strained tension of subterfuge, and the nights were still and there was nothing but Gava's breath and a muffled wind to distract her, sometimes she wondered if they would ever recover. Of course they would, she always told herself. As long as they had each other, they would survive. Like her father, the ship would always live on in their memories. The wound was still fresh, and it wouldn't stop hurting just because she knew it would heal.
I'm gonna go check the docks,
Anna said, sliding out of her seat.
Wash your beak and chew some mint. No pony's gonna take us on with blood on our breath.
When Rainbow woke up, she was warm and comfortable. She sighed and rolled over, snuggling a little deeper into the bed. The scratchy wool wasn't nearly as soft as her cloud, but she was loath to drag her aching body away and abandon the precious heat trapped under the blanket tucked snugly around her shoulders. The quiet rumble of the engine drifted through her ears, lulling her back towards sleep with its vibrations. Rainbow frowned, eye fluttering open. Sea Saber was sitting attentively in front of her. She was in Twilight's room. Applejack was dozing next to the bed with her battered hat pulled down over her eyes. The curtain drawn across the empty doorway waved softly with the motion of the ship, and a bowl smelling faintly of apple and ginger was carefully squeezed into the one space of Twilight's old desk not covered in her abandoned notes.
Saber.
Rainbow's throat was so dry it hurt. She winced, licking her lips.
I heard you found something.
Saber grabbed the bowl off the table and held it out.
Drink.
Rainbow sat up with a groan, and a small shiver passed through her as the blanket fell off her shoulders. She accepted the bowl in silence, cradling it in her forelegs, and brought it to her lips. Apple soup. Rainbow hadn't thought it was possible to cook apple into a soup, but Applejack had apparently found a way. The broth was thick and creamy, with dried apple chunks mixed in among potato, celery, and carrot. She could still feel a bit of lingering heat on the bottom of the bowl, but the soup itself was only lukewarm. Warm or not, the smooth broth sliding down her throat was a welcome relief.
The ship's taken some damage.
Rainbow frowned as she lowered the bowl, meeting Saber's steely gaze.
Huh?
Sunfeather spotted you right before the storm hit us,
Saber explained.
We could have flown above the worst of it, but I expected you might have trouble tracking us after losing visual. We anchored to one of the mountain peaks low to the ground. The envelope is in tatters, and our main propeller lost a blade.
She pursed her lips.
I hope you found something solid, because every day we spend out here, we risk hitting another of those storms, or worse.
Rainbow answered with a tired grin.
Well, you're in luck, because I found exactly where we need to go. Probably 10 times faster than if I'd stayed with the ship, too.
Saber narrowed her eyes, and Rainbow suddenly realized what the other Pegasus had meant with her words. Saber had put her ship, her crew, in danger for Rainbow's sake. Her grin faltered as she looked away.
I mean, there's a tower thing, north by northwest. There was an airship around it too, so maybe we can get repairs there.
A tower? And an airship?
Saber's brow furrowed.
That can't be right. There's no settlements this far north, it's nothing but ice.
I know what I saw, Saber,
Rainbow said, meeting her gaze once more.
Someone's living out here. And whatever that place is, that's where we need to be, I'm sure of it.
For a long while, Saber didn't say anything. She sat in silent contemplation, one ear occasionally flicking. Rainbow continued to sip at her soup while she waited, already forming her arguments for why they needed to press on, why they couldn't turn back and leave now that they were so close.
Very well. North by northwest.
Saber stood up, stepping towards the doorway.
And Rainbow?
Rainbow sighed. No doubt this was when she'd get an earful about endangering the crew or the ship, or maybe another lecture on discipline.
Yeah?
Applejack cares about you.
Saber jerked her head towards the sleeping cow pony. You should remember that more often. Saber left without waiting for a response, leaving Rainbow blinking after her in response. What was that supposed to mean? Rainbow looked to Applejack, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. She lifted the bowl of soup to her lips and took another long sip.
We're coming, Twilight.